Hey guys, so we are looking at Marcus from Team Overkill, and he sells his presets on his Instagram, so make sure you go give him a follow, check those out. But we're going to be looking at how he gets his orange and teal color grade that he uses throughout his Instagram. So we might as well get straight into it, and I'm going to start by just decreasing the exposure a tad and upping the contrast, really bringing up the highlights. And the shadows, so that gives the real bright washed out feeling. It's quite hard for beginners to notice, but there's very little shadows in his images because they're so bright. And then you bring whites all the way down so that you don't get overexposure. The very white bits of the image aren't blowing out and look crazy white. And then you do the same with the blacks. So I'm going to drop them down. And then clarity, I'm going to leave it there. Vibrance, maybe just a touch. And I'm going to bring down the saturation. So tone curve, drop the shadows a bit, up. The blacks, he's got a little bit of a fade. And then just take down those whites a tad. And the highlights up a tad. So that will create a bit of contrast. And onto the colours. So orange and teal, we're going to move our reds all the way to the orange. Yellows way to the orange, and then the greens are going way to the yellows, and it's not looking too good at the moment, but it will be alright. And then I'm going to drop these blues, and onto saturation. Going to bring up the reds a bit, oranges a bit, and now we need to drop those yellows. And drop all these blues. And we'll drop some of these purples and magentas. And onto luminance. So remember that if you drop the luminance, you get a deeper colour. So we want nice deep oranges. And bring up these yellows, really creates a pop. I almost always bring them up. And greens can come up a little bit. Bring up the aquas. Will help the sky. And before I go any further, I'm going to come down here, and this is what's going to correct our image the most. So I'm going to bring this down to 30. Should look good. Yeah. And then bring that saturation down. If I come back up, we are going to get the sky. We're going to work on getting our sky back as it's just completely disappeared. So we come up here to filters. Just do a little one there on the horizon. So we need to reset our filter, Alt, and then hit reset up there. And the first thing we're going to do, up the contrast, up the clarity, Bit of dehaze. Quite a bit of dehaze. Bring down the saturation. And bring down the highlights. That really brought it out. And I'm gonna leave our sky there. I think that's looking pretty good. So his looks nice and he's got a nice glare going on from the left. He's got some light coming in from the left. So what we can do is grab another filter, drag it about there, and then we have to reset our filter again. And what I'm going to do is just add a tiny bit of exposure, and then whenever you add exposure you want to add contrast, otherwise it will just look flat. I'm going to add quite a bit, and then I'm going to add a little bit of haze. So this looks like the sun's really shining in from the left. So you get that nice rays of sun. And one thing that's annoying me is we've got some greens in the sky here. And it's not really our fault, it's sort of just the camera's really struggling to grab those colours back there. So what I'm going to do that. Reset the filter, and what I'm going to do is just put some blue in there. It's going to help get rid of the greens. It already looks better, but I'm also going to put some purples in there. That should help even more. And I'm going to feather it a bit. So now those greens are gone. And I think we're looking pretty good. I'm going to see how it looks if I drop the exposure a tad. This grass is a bit longer. There's more of the lighter bits of the grass. Our grass is much shorter, so there's more deeper colours. I'm going to just up the exposure a bit in the sky, up the shadows. And I'm just going to leave it as that. Now I think it's pretty close, but when we try it on another image, we'll see how it looks. So I'm going to save this as orange and teal and create. So now if I pull up another image, I'll just show you before and after. Before, after. Looking pretty good. So I'll get this next image up. Now let's work on applying our Lut, and bang. Before, after, before, after. Looking really, really good. We need to bring that sky back again. So what I'm going to do is just filter, bring down that exposure. Oh, I need to reset the filter. Bring down that exposure. Come down to clarity, bring that all the way. Bit of dehaze. Take down some saturation. I'm going to lift the blacks a bit. And lift the whites a bit. So hopefully you guys can see some similarity there. Before, after. Up the exposure a little. Before, after. So, and a different sort of color he does ones like these sometimes. So what we will do is grab another image and let's apply our orange and teal. Actually, before I apply it, I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. And now let's apply our Lut, orange and teal, and you see the colors aren't quite matching up. We've got our oranges and our teals, but this image, he does some things a little different. So I'm just gonna drop the saturation. And then I'm gonna come down, I'm gonna drop those blues. We're looking better, but still, this is what's really gonna match those colors. Adding a tiny bit of magenta. Into those highlights. And hopefully you guys can see the similarity there. So without the magenta, with the magenta. With and without. So saturation of the blues down a bit more. And you get that real bright washed out look. I quite like it. So I'm going to save this one as a Lut as well. Orange and teal magenta. Create. So he also has this sort of image, and so let's see if we just change a few things. So let's bring back a bit more colors. And then come down to split toning and just bring this back down to 5. And then I'm just going to bring up my whites. And then you get a pretty similar image, in my opinion, for after. Just a bit easier on those magentas. And yeah, so that looks really good, but we haven't looked at an image that has greens in it. So let's see how our Lut does if it has greens. So I'm just going to expose it. And then apply the orange and teal first Lut we did. And bang, pretty close. I'm just going to maybe drop the highlights. So the colors are pretty good. It's just you got to expose the image, which also has an effect on the colors. And yeah, I think it's looking pretty good. If you think our yellows are looking a little too punchy, might come down here and just drop the luminance of the greens. And then it gets a bit deeper and a bit softer. But that's pretty good. You can see that Lut gives you the nice orange and teal look here, before, after. before, after, and that was with no tweaking at all. Straight away get awesome colours, and then he does this quite washed out beach look, bit of magenta, put our magenta light on, and increase the whites, real washed out awesome beach look. And then as we saw before, he sort of goes a bit easier on those magentas sometimes, and you get a really nice washed out bright image. And yeah, so I'm going to leave it there, guys. Make sure you go follow him. He's got his own presets available on his Instagram, so check that out, and all links are in the description. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.